In this video, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about negotiating in person. This video is going to be especially focused on your first meet with someone that you're going to be negotiating with. We're going to do this in a timeline format. Everything you need to do prior to meeting that person, everything you need to do as you meet that person, and everything you need to know and keep in mind during the negotiation process. I'm making this video for you now because I'm actually negotiating another deal myself. I'm in Manhattan right now working out the terms on a $28 million real estate contract, and one of these gentlemen at this table I've never met before. So I'm going to be able to use this exact experience I'm about to go through right now to teach you all about negotiations. It's going to be super fresh in my mind. This is going to be a great video. Buckle up. Let's talk negotiations. All right, huge win today. I'll tell you all about it here in a second, but let's start this video by teaching you section 1. And section 1 of negotiating, and according to the system, is everything that you need to know up until the point that you meet somebody for negotiations. And so, like this video, subscribe if you're new. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff dealing with negotiations in real estate. This is great for you. So, number 1 is prepare. That means that you need to know the people that you're meeting with, person or persons. So, where are they from? What do they do? What's their birthday? Do they have kids? Do they have husbands, wives, etc.? Get all the information about them that you need in order to have a real custom conversation with them. That way, you're not flying in blind and just having small talk. You want to get deeper than that.
So you're doing it, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
2, show up early. That means 15 minutes, 20 minutes before your meeting. The last thing you want to do is be flustered because of traffic or any other external reasons why you're late. You wonder if this is going to cause a negative first impression. You want to get that out of the way and protect yourself from against some awkward emotional state of mind that you're trying to avoid. And being late is one of those things. And of course, being early sets a great first impression. That's part of setting a good first impression, which is part of showing respect and winning your negotiation through not falling into any traps, like cultural traps, like being late to a meeting. 3, dress the part. That means you dress at or above expectations. Now, in Texas, where I live, a lot of people are really casual, and their meetings, they're dressed casual. We're talking about jeans and boots kind of casual, where in other bigger cities, people wear suits and they wear ties. I was going to New York, so obviously I dressed the part. There's no such thing as overdressed, but there's definitely a thing called underdressed, and don't end up in that category. Don't overblow it and wear a full tuxedo. Of course you did your homework on the person you're negotiating with. You should kind of know where they are and nail the mark. Do your homework to know them, to know what you think is culturally appropriate for when you meet with them. 4, when you're there early, next you focus on mindset. You want to make sure that you feel prepared, that you feel confident, that you understand that there's no more preparation that you can do. This meeting is happening right now. So mindset over everything. It's like taking an exam. You can cram, but when you're stressed for that exam, the moment the exam starts, you're in the wrong emotional state to perform well. You need to get into a place where you're performing well emotionally, which means that 15 minutes before the meeting starts, you need to really focus on your mindset. Make sure that you're calm and collected and optimistic and ready for that meeting. This allows you to get into a flow state. A flow state is where you can react freely to somebody. You have no expectations. You already know what you want to talk to them about. You already have that kind of prepared, but you're not circling in your brain about the things that you think you're going to say and wondering how it's going to go. You need to wipe all that stuff out and clear your mind all the way and get into that flow state so that way you can meet that person authentically, respond to them authentically, and do things one step at a time without getting ahead of yourself. A lot of people who screw up negotiations when they're new, they talk way too fast, they say way too much stuff, they're nervous, they try too hard, they oversell, all these different things. And a lot of this can get avoided by getting into that flow state. Look it up. So let's move on. Next chapter of this is starting with the handshake. We're going to cover everything that you need to know once you're at the table, like having coffee or having lunch. We're going to jump into that next. Okay, now for the back end of this video, this is where it gets really deep. Of course, we just covered all the fun stuff before you arrive and you have a sit down with somebody looking at them eye to eye during a negotiation. Now the rest of this video, I'm going to take you from the hello and the handshake all the way through to where you're at the end of the negotiation and you guys part ways, hopefully with a deal in your favor or the workings of a deal. Okay, so first thing is you want to make sure that you set a good, positive first impression. Now, we try to prepare you for that by researching your client or researching the person you're negotiating with, making sure you dress for the part, making sure that you're in the right mindset, you're in a flow state so you can actually just meet somebody and react to them as they are. You want to work on all that. But there's a book that I recommend you read called Enchantment. It's actually by Guy Kawasaki, Apple guy, ex-Apple dude, and he talks about the four like aspects of like a great first impression, and like how to smile like where your crow's feet show, because that's actually how you your smile is real on your face instead of like a fake smile. And he talks about all sorts of other stuff. So natural first impression tips. The Enchantment is a great book. Now your body language can't be too loose, can't be too rigid, but people are forgiving of people being slightly nervous. Not everybody's an extrovert. So even if you are a little bit tight in the shoulders when you meet somebody for the first time, some people take that as a positive sign of respect. I know people in HR are trained to look past people's nervousness, because nervous just means you care. And if you like tag somebody for being nervous in an interview, you'd like flunk all of your applicants except for sociopaths. So being nervous a little bit is okay, just don't be too tight and get out of your head. If you feel like you're super nervous, just try to feel your feet. Feel your extremities. You'll find this is a real fun trick, because like when you're in your head, you can't feel the rest of your body. You're gonna find that like the weirdest thing ever. So I try to like curl my feet if I ever find myself being like too emotional or my brain is racing. So remember just to stay kind of mindful of your body, so that way you can be mindful of your body language and relax when you meet somebody. Handshakes are important. I like the palm slightly up, not too much like car salesman, and definitely don't like power somebody. Like level is good, or even just a little bit opened up, because that's like a sign of openness without being submissive. And you can like touch somebody's arm when you shake their hand, but with COVID-19, you probably want to skip that for a little while. Look them in the eye, nod, you know what I mean? The handshake's firm, meat of the hands into the hand like this, nice and firm. Lock the thumbs in before you clasp and shake that hand. A second and a half is probably right. Any more than a second and a half for a handshake, and you're just like, now you're just making the guy uncomfortable. So don't do the too long of a handshake thing. That always bugs me out. Also, you don't want to get caught trying too hard. So really, really don't try too hard to make this negotiation work. If you try too hard, like you're going to be forcing jokes or forcing laughter in response to what people say, hoping that you can really make it happen. Well, the thing is people look for natural fits. Like they look for natural fits between people, and people will make those natural fits work as long as there's a natural interaction. And if you try to force something, you're going to make something like so unnatural that it's awkward, and you're going to make it impossible for that other person to connect with you. Because anytime that two people come in to negotiate, you should expect that both persons are wasting their time at this meeting, so both persons want a deal done. That means there's something in it for them, and they're trying to find a reason to do business with you because they see a potential in getting what they want with you or from you. So don't try too hard, because they're there for a reason anyway, and don't muck it up because you're trying to force the issue. Just be human and relax, like I said, and let the whole thing flow. Next is listen more than you speak. Gathering information in a negotiation is probably one of the most important things. You want to find people's pain points, you want to find their ambitions, you want to let them talk about what they want to talk about, so you can find out kind of the way that their mind likes to wander and what subjects matter to them, and maybe anything that happened to them recently that you can queue up and make a theme in the conversation. You want to find out what style of humor they think is funny, so you have to listen more than you speak. Always let the other person talk first. Like always let them open up and be interested in them, and ask open-ended questions where they can tell you more in any way or format that they want to tell you their story. You've got to let them give you things, and you've got to spend your time opening them up and letting them kind of like walk themselves out into the open, instead of trying to pry somebody open, with like controlled questions like, do you feel that this is the best decision for your business? Like you don't want to be like aggressive and asking a bunch of yes or no questions where you're obviously leading the person to like a point. Let them talk. And you're going to find that you're going to be in such a more powerful position 15 minutes into that negotiation. In order to pull this off, where you listen more than you talk and you're in a flow state, you're natural, you need to stop focusing on what you have prepared. So you practice what you wanted to say for days and days before this like negotiation. You've practiced the bullet points, the benefits, everything, right? You know it all. And it's been racing through the back of your head because this is my golden ticket to get this deal done. I've got to say these magic words at the right time. No. Yes, but no. So you've learned everything that you need to say to somebody that you want to negotiate with, and it's going to be important to say when the opportunity presents itself in the right way. But you don't want to just like try to go and give a speech at the first moment that you have an opportunity to speak. So tell me more about you. Well, hey, so yeah, the great thing about this deal is, no, like he said, tell me more about you, not more about your deal. You know what I mean? So if you're constantly thinking about what you want to deliver to somebody, you're not going to be able to actually authentically respond to the conversation because you're constantly going to like try to segue into your pitch. And you have to abandon your pitch when you're getting to know somebody. Your pitch does not matter. It should be the last thing on your brain. You will eventually get a chance to start saying some of those key tidbits, and the script never goes 100% according to script, right? You don't line up a person like perfectly to swing the bat like it's t-ball. So you have to abandon your script, but remember the moral of the story, and the conversation will flow to where you can start to deliver pieces of it at a time where the person is ready to hear you. But you can't focus on that stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to constantly try to like railroad them with the things that you want to say, and the person's going to catch you being insanely inauthentic, and they're going to start to not like you, and they might even get annoyed in your conversation if you constantly try to hit them with these preparatory phrases, because they obviously sound unnatural because they're practiced scripts and they sound unnatural. There's no way to avoid that. So to be natural, you have to abandon them and just remember the concept of what you were saying. Now, as you get to the point where you're going to be able to say the things you want to say, you've got to segue into getting that person ready for you, ready for what you have to offer, ready for your proposal. So while they're talking, while you're listening, you want to use mirroring techniques and other NLP techniques. And here's a couple. So mirroring is where if somebody leans in, you lean in. If somebody holds their hands this way, you hold your hands this way. If somebody leans back, you lean back. Somebody crosses their legs, crosses their arms, leans to the left. You mirror their body language so that way you are doing more things similar to them so they seem to think that you're more like them. And because people are tribal. Humans are social creatures, and they've been in tribes ever since we've had writing, right? So they tend to form in groups, and they look for kind. Kind recognizes kind. So that is one way to make somebody think that you're like on the level, because you do a lot of the same things that they do. Mirroring, keep it subtle. Don't do like every single thing that they do and like why you're copying me, bro. But the little things, start to, flow with it. And what's cool is they will start to do it back as a sign that it's working, and they won't even notice it. So you'll notice that when the person is actually like vibing with you, that when you lean in, they'll lean in too. And so you can start taking the lead on these things just to do what's called a compliance test. I mean, you can test to see if they're in this conversation. See, when somebody mirrors your body language back, you're getting a cue that their buying temperature is higher, that their interest level is higher, and you have their focus, you have their attention. So that's great. They say that blinking faster is a sign of liking. So it's a very subtle way to tell somebody you like them, is just to blink more when like you're having a conversation with them. I don't ever really try to use that. It might happen naturally, whatever. Now, I also like copycatting their phrases. So if somebody likes to use the word bud or pal, I try to use the word bud or pal instead of friend or champ, or something like that. So cultural syntax and phrases and stuff like that is another way to be tribal. You're looking for more similarities. And you're trying to achieve likability and respect first before you achieve their interest. And so this like compliance test thing that I just talked about is kind of a great way to talk about the roadmap for this. By doing things that line you up with them, make you seem more likable, make you seem respectable, you've been listening more, you haven't said anything dumb, people like being listened to, all these things that you've done have really made the person enjoy their experience with you, so they are much more likely to like you now. And they respect you because you haven't done anything cliche terrible. That, like, we've all had disaster dates. Negotiations can go the same way. There is a silent appreciation for the fact that you're not being a weirdo during the negotiation. And at that point that you've earned all of these unspoken points with this person, then you can start to generate interest in your pitch or your product or your proposal. And at this point, what you can do is you can start to line them up for your pitch or your points by feeding back to them things that they've said earlier on in the conversation with your own unique phrasing that starts to point in a certain direction. So if somebody has a pain point, like they're paying way too much in like interest payments on something, or their cost of turning over new tenants is too high, like that's something that I would play with. So I would, like my negotiation that I had today, this new guy that I never met before, he's been investing with a guy that I have like multiple leases with. And so I'm about to pick up 4 townhomes with this dude, but at the same time, we're negotiating this $28 million real estate investment package where we're going to try to buy a series of properties throughout Philadelphia in areas that are on the come up. And so we're discussing the terms of this deal, who gets what equity and like what's the payout structure and all that good stuff. So when meeting with this guy, I got to hear all sorts of things about him. Like he used to be in boxing, and he's this really kind of like this like cooperative, fast kind of guy. His brain is like nice and quick, and he's a super polite dude. And he's very cooperative with everybody at the table. He's always trying to cooperate in their stories. So I can tell that this guy, like, we're just gonna hit it off as long as I'm giving value to him, and he'll get curious and give value to me back, and we can generate this synergy. And so during the conversation with him, I was able to find that one of his greatest expenses as a landlord was the cost of replacing a tenant after one moves out. So I started talking about rental arbitrage, which is what I do, and in that conversation, I made sure to stop at the part where we signed 2 or 3 year long leases, and we always renew those leases as long as everything is going normal or better. So as part of our like business model, we try to pitch. I told him I try to pitch landlords on the fact that we can lease 100% of a building within a month, and then we keep the building essentially forever as long as our model works out in the neighborhood. And of course, we do our due diligence to make sure the model is going to work before we say yes to an investor on a building. And so in return, this is kind of what a deal would look like when we pitch a landlord like that. And so instead of saying, if I could tell you this, would you be interested, like a salesperson, I basically did what a recruiter would do. You call the person you want to hire and say, hey, our company's looking for a software engineer. I know that you're one of the best software engineers I've ever met. Do you know anybody who's on the market for like a really high paying, cutting edge software engineer job? I bet you know tons of people. You're actually hoping that guy says, well, yeah, me. I want that job, right? So you call the person you're trying to hire, asking him if they know anybody else. So I did the same thing with this landlord while feeding back his problem, his pain point. And I'm like, I have a solution to that pain point. And so when I pitch other landlords what we do, this is the way that I tell them this. Like, this is how I pitch them. And so he like basically ran straight into my proposal without knowing that I was like laying the proposal out in front of him. And I kind of opened the door for him to like say, well, tell me more. So how do you choose your buildings? You know what I mean? And so now I start telling him about my marketing, my market research strategy for my rental arbitrage business. And I was able to start layering on all the benefits. And that leads me to like one of my next points, which is never forget that there's something in it for the person you're negotiating with. You need to find synergies where what you do and what they do can get better together. And it always has to have an advantage for them. The moment you find out what's in it for them, do not forget it, and don't let them forget it either. So you're constantly, what's called embedding, where you weave in value for them as you're telling a story. So you constantly reference value for them in passing as you're telling your full story. So that way, it's not inherently obvious that you're trying to give them like a reminder that what you're pitching them is valuable. But it's like recognizing the fact that blank, this is good in this situation, or recognizing the fact that blank cap rate goes up. And you just mention that stuff along the way in your negotiations or in your presentation, and it keeps them thinking about how this is good for them. And that's a great thing to do, is leave breadcrumbs of value and reminders that it's synergy on the way through your presentation, because a lot of times the things that we explain, they're not simple. And we need to be able to get out enough details that the person knows what they're getting themselves into. So you have to keep them on the string. So you have to keep feeding them as they actually listen to you. You got to give them treats along the way. So with that, there's a caveat. You've got to keep it simple. That means your terminology, inside lingo, stuff like that. You can't go off the deep end and totally nerd jack the conversation and say stuff that they don't understand. A lot of times people will nod along and go, because they don't want to sound dumb. But they're gonna not understand inner like jargon, and you're gonna lose them because there's key facts of the deal that you could have explained at a 4th grade level, but you're trying to explain it like he's an MIT student. And that makes you feel smart, but it loses you the deal. So keep things in layman's terms as much as possible, unless you're dealing with a subject matter expert who really enjoys using acronyms and stuff like that. And that becomes hyper apparent in the conversation because they're the ones trying to push the envelope on cerebral conversation. But if you're not talking to a cerebral who wants to like get his adrenaline rush off of using big words, then avoid it like the plague, because you don't want to be that guy, okay? Now, also, remember at all times that the person that you're negotiating with, their decisions are going to be emotional and they're going to be justified with logic. So in order for somebody to choose to do business with you, they have to have the feeling that they should. They're going to get a feeling that they want to do business with you, a feeling to say yes, and they're going to justify their yes with logic that you've given them along the way. but the logic is such a small piece of that greater pie. See, the brain has two layers. You've got that outer layer where it's like, what's 2 times 2? But then that inner neural network where like the serotonin and your other like neurotransmitters are firing, and it's all chemical and all hormonal. Like, you can't control that. You can't make sense of that on the fly. So a welling up of like, this isn't good, I don't like this, I've got a bad feeling about this, or welling up of like, wow, this is really popping off, like this is really cool, I like your powder keg romance in this business deal. Like, that stuff is all like subliminal underlayer stuff. And then people's decisions on what they want to talk about, where they want to go with the deal, if they want to do the deal, all that's an outer layer that is highly dependent on the emotional state that you put the person you're negotiating with in. And finally, you're like at the end of the deal now, right? You've got your pitch down, you put it on the table, you've gone back and forth with some questions, and you've like mulled over cool ideas and go, well, we could actually even do this, blah, blah, blah. Don't be outcome dependent. See, every negotiation is going to be unique because you're talking to a unique person every single time. So when you get through this negotiation, some people, they just feel the need that they need to spend a couple days on it. And they're not going to say yes or no like at the table. There's going to be people who want to shake hands and make a contractual agreement on a handshake, and that's like completely the opposite end of the spectrum. Some people want to draft up like a prospectus and some documentation and sign some things. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. And if you're depending on a very specific outcome for them to say something in return, like, yes, here's like, yeah, I'll take the pen and sign this document right now. If you're outcome dependent, you're going to lose 80% of your deals or your negotiations because nothing ever fits that way. So the moment that somebody disappoints you by saying no to your offering in the way that you wanted them to say yes, you don't adapt because you get like, you fall on your face because like, oh, it didn't work. Right? I was depending on this outcome and it didn't work. So you've got this hit-miss mentality there. But what you have is you should be looking at it like a heat map and like finding out, well, where are they on this deal compared to where I want to get them? See, during that negotiation, your presentation, you're trying to drop them as close to your deal, your terms as possible, right? And if you drop them somewhere else on the table and they're a few terms away from what you find most ideal, you then spend the back end, the next week or so, trying to wrap it up and move them, nudge them closer and closer to the way you want your deal done. Now, if you can't get the deal done 100% the terms that you want, that's okay. If you can get 95 or 90% of your deal the way you like that deal, that is a huge win because you got them to take 90% of your deal and think that it's good for them. And then if they had 10% of things that they needed to modify for them and you only have to accept 10% of their terms, you're crushing it. But a lot of people who like take a sales approach to negotiations where they like winner takes all, they can't stomach the fact that they've got to give up things in return. And so they either want their deal closed the way that they want it closed, or they feel like they screwed it all up and like it affects them on the back end and they're unable to adapt to nuances that are presented to them in response to their presentation. And you need to make sure that you stay fluid, like we talked about being in that flow state. And now creativity comes in and you find out more information, which is totally to your advantage. You find out more information about this person, about why they're saying yes or no to certain things. And then you can respond again and go, wow, I had no clue that, this is kind of how you do your business, or these are the things you're dealing with. You can actually, use this product that I offer, or you can use this referral partner that I have, or let me bring in an expert on the deal, and because they can do this with you and set up your entity a certain way, like whatever it is you're pitching, you can actually make the deal even more perfect than you could have ever imagined because you were not aware that there was a hidden opportunity in the problem, right? So when somebody comes back and says, we can't do the deal like that, if you get shut down, you can't find that opportunity in the problem. It's a dance. It's a back and forth. And you should expect the deal to be done later. You should always expect that you're going to leave your first meeting with somebody at the negotiation table halfway, but optimistically halfway. You want to be in a good direction and you want to have good momentum, and you want you and that other person to enjoy the journey of negotiating more than anything else, because you want that person to pick up your phone call later. You want that person to meet with you again and like talk about extra terms. You want that person to give you extra business if they're not the right fit for what you do. You want them to be like, man, this guy, he knows what he's doing, and I really like him. We had coffee. I think you should meet with him. I'll endorse this guy. You can meet with this total stranger, and like he'll give you referrals. This is how you negotiate. Get people to enjoy spending time around you, and voila, all the doors start to open. I hope that you use this stuff and you guys absolutely crush it. Negotiating is absolutely key because, like, as you guys know my business model, I negotiate with landlords all the time. And I just got a landlord who said no to my 6 weeks free up front. And here's what I did. I'm gonna give you this kind of like this bonus one. For rental arbitrage guys, you're gonna love this. Landlord's like, I'm not gonna give you 6 weeks free on this 2-year-long lease. The rents are already too low. And I initially said, okay, I want 10 weeks free, half security deposit, no last month's rent. So I offered, I'll pay you the first 4 weeks of rent and a half month of security deposit. And then I want 6 weeks free and we'll pick up rent in 10 weeks. That's what I offered. He said no. And I said in that deal that we'd pick up the lease like in 10 days or less is what we committed to. What I did is he's like, no to that. So I went back to him and I'm like, okay, so you have 3 units that you want to get leased right away. Winter's coming here in Philadelphia and you don't want to go into the winter with 1 or 2 of these not done. This deal would be so clean if we got it done. Now, our business model, we need rent concessions up front because we invest so much money into furniture. So this is something that we really can't take off the table, but I'm willing to modify it a little bit for you. How about we do this? I'll take that 6 weeks and I'll make it 5 weeks rent free. And then instead of taking the lease in 10 days, I'll take the lease in 4 days, giving you an extra 6 days of rent because I'm taking it 6 days faster. So I'm giving you essentially 2 weeks back out of the 6 weeks that I asked for, where I still get 5, but you get 2 of them back. How's that? And he said yes to that deal. So what I did is I used timeline to acquisition and like taking the lease faster and a slight reduction in my 6 weeks free down to 5, where a lot of people would have dropped down to 4 right away. I dropped down to 5 and gave him something else, and it worked. Because a lot of people say no to the first round of negotiations because they know that there's a better deal for them on the other side. Give yourself some wiggle room for you to like make concessions. And like this is one of the biggest parts of like negotiating deals. People like to know that they got a deal, which means they need to ask you to do something that you don't usually do. So you have to leave room to make those judgment calls. Even if that's like the deal you wanted at the end of the day, you still need to set it up that it's 2 or 3 steps removed. That's a big deal for negotiations. So this stuff is powerful. I promise you, it's how I've made my millions of dollars. Negotiating with people the way that they want to be talked to. Use this stuff, watch this video again, take notes and practice, and you will be closing deals left and right. I look forward to hearing your results. Put them in the comments, and I'll see you on the other side.